What's going on, everybody? Oh, man. Miami Dolphins getting themselves a nice little victory over the Houston Texans, 30-15, as they run their record now to 8-3 atop the AFC East. What a hell of a season it's been so far for your Miami Dolphins. And certainly, look, this is a game you could go, and this could be dissected into two halves. It was a game that was a story of two halves. It's just one was much more interesting than the second story, than the second story for sure. Because look, you go to a game and you run out to a 30-0 lead. As a Dolphin fan, that's celebrated. I don't care who you are. There's plenty of things we can talk about as concern for the second half. I'm not going to ignore those. We will get to those. But the first half of this team against Houston, who was a terrible team, admittedly, they're bad. And the Dolphins have completely taken advantage of a cream puff part of their schedule, which they were supposed to. That's what you do when you're a good team. Plenty of times, week in and week out, we'll look at a football schedule and be like, man, how did that happen? Man, how did that happen? Man, how did that happen? And the Dolphins didn't let that happen at any point in this little 5-game run. We talked a lot about going into this season that the Dolphins' schedule was going to be broken up into 3 parts. Really tough start to the season, and then kind of a mediocre part, getting into real easy, and then there was going to be a challenge. So really 4 parts, right? And they got off to this 3-0 start, then had to deal with their quarterback being out. And as soon as he gets back, they start this run against a lot of bad teams. And they have completely handled those teams week in and week out and really, really look like they are hitting their stride, going to what is going to be their nut up part of the season. This is going to be the real determining factor as to how good this Tua team is how good this team with Tua Tagovailoa as their quarterback is going to be. But as far as today was concerned, the interesting things coming out of the gate, no Raheem Mostert, Austin Jackson back starting at right tackle after all of that time out, dealing with the high ankle sprain. So you had a couple of interesting things, and I thought that it was noticeable, both changes. One, not saying this is all on Austin Jackson, but really I think we all as Dolphin fans could look at the way the offensive line was playing and could say to ourselves, you know what? This thing looks figured out for the first time in a long time. And so throwing Austin Jackson into there, yes, you're eventually going to have to play him. He's one of your first-round picks. I get it. The plan was him to start going into the season. But you had really found some cohesion there that was working with Shell at right guard, Shell at right tackle, Jones at left guard, in for Eichenberg. And so, I could get the lack of desire to want to shake that up. And I do feel like today was, in a lot of ways, one of the shakier offensive line games. The other thing you didn't have was Raheem Mostert. And I thought the running game suffered because of it. It was definitely felt that that element to the Dolphins games, that push and pull, the force of Jeff Wilson being able to be countered with the speed of Raheem Mostert wasn't quite there, and left some things that left you scratching your head a little bit. But as far as the start of this game was, so many times this Dolphins team, early goings of it was just like Tua, first down throw, to Hill, to Waddle, to Craycraft, just boom, boom, boom. All of them are like 11, 15-yard plays right over the middle. That patented moves, some of that elusiveness that he's able to show. And, you got humming along so easily in some of these early drives that when it kind of stuttered with a few incompletions in a row, you're just like, that's something. And whether you want to say they were just drops with Waddle or the throws were a little bit off on Tua, I think all of them are fair criticism. But I think that, I thought the offense, as crazy as it seems, they played a pretty good game today. I don't think that they had their A-plus game or had one of their best games by far. But I thought one of the things that was great about it is even with them not having their best performances, the defense showed up in a huge way today and gave them something that this defense has not given them a lot this season, which is timely turnovers that the offense was able to convert into touchdowns. And that, to me, was the thing that really put the dagger in this game for Miami, that they were able to get a big interception from Von Ginkel, set up an easy touchdown for Jeff Wilson. You had the huge truck stick hit from Eric Rowe, setting up the scoop and score for Xavier Howard. So it really piled on what was looking at as a terrible Houston Texans team. And then on the other end of it with Tua and the crew on the offensive side of the football, I thought that they played well. Certainly those couple of drives where it sputtered out, one of them resulting in a field goal, one of them ended up in a punt where it was midfield. I swear to God, I thought that Mike McDaniel was still going to go for it on 4th and 10 midfield, just because that's seemingly how he goes with his giant wheelbarrow cojones. But he did not, and we saw Thomas Morstead today, and it was good to see him. One of the things that was Goosey's galore, I'm not going to lie, was CBS had this report. They basically had a sit down with Tua. Every week they get to talk to players. They get to talk to the coach. TV crew gets to have like a little back and forth that they don't air, but it's just kind of pick their brain, get some little deets. And they talked about this story with Tua Tagovailoa. And dude, it was Goosey's galore because it had everything. It had like a story arc. It was like sad and you were feeling really bad for Tua, but then this all happened in the midst of 30 seconds. And then you found out the end and you were so happy because they basically said this story. It was relayed that Tua at some points last year was looking in the mirror, except not happy like the song, looking sad and asking himself, do I suck? And it just broke your heart because like, this man loves Christmas, loves Christmas cards. He's adorable, now a family man. What's not to love about this Tua Tagovailoa, right? And to see the joy sucked out of him like that and to hear about that was a bummer. And he was asked about this, and he said that Mike McDaniel's response to a broken Tua when he first met him was that he was going to give him a reel, a highlight reel. He gave him 700 plays of his best stuff and kind of showed him this is what good Tua looks like. And that was part of the thing that really got him to buy into Tua Tagovailoa. And I just got to say to that story, it's off the Gooster scale, bro. Like you can't even measure the level of Goosies after hearing that story. That's how good it was from everything you got there. But yeah, man, I thought that for this team, they really they got off to just such a hot start, and then going to the halftime with this 30-0 lead. Tua was really spreading the ball around great. You see the final numbers, and yeah, you probably could look and say, they all could have been a little bit better. He finished 22 of 36, so not the most accurate game from him. 299 yards. He was sacked 4 times, all I think with Teron Armstead out. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, River Craycraft, all with 4 catches or more today. So he was spreading the ball around a lot. But the second half was an interesting thing because you're up 30-0, and then Teron Armstead goes out, and he has a pec injury. We learned that he has a pec injury. And so Tua really starts getting lit up, dude. He is getting sacked a lot, and he had already taken some pretty gnarly shots. Like there was one even in the first half where Tua was basically bent backwards and looked like Neo in the Matrix. Like it was a pretty scary sight. And I think that's one of the things where, Tua's not the biggest guy in the world. He has certainly been hurt. And you have to ask yourself something as a coach. You have to think, do I feel confident that my team can hold the fort on a 30-0 lead against this awful, dreadful Houston Texans team? And I understand why the answer is yes. Of course you feel like you can hold down the fort and put a team away and let Tua Tagovailoa rest a little bit. And I had somebody say, well, other quarterbacks don't have this concern. A Josh Allen, a Tom Brady, a Patrick Mahomes. You don't have to have durability concerns. To which I would say, I get your point there in saying that what other quarterback do you have to worry about fragility? They are bigger than him. I mean, like your eyes don't lie. Josh Allen is bigger than Tua Tagovailoa. He also loves giving the football to the other team. The other thing I would say to that is this is done all the time, just typically done in the midst of games in the season, not in the middle of games where you lose your left tackle, you're up 30-0. But every year, usually a team that is 1 or 2 and has nothing to play for they sit their best players in the last game. Why? It's a violent game. Look at a meaningless game today. What happened to Rex Burkhead? What Duke Riley did to him, flipped him over like a bull running through a bar. Like just completely tossed him up like a little rag doll. And players are, teams all the time will take their guys out to avoid collisions. And Tua was getting lit up like a Christmas tree. And by the way, I thought for him, this really wasn't there were plenty of times today where he was even with Armstead in there was having to avoid pressure a lot and showed, I think you saw that touchdown to Durham Smythe. That was some of his fanciest footwork of the year. He really showed some great stuff. Remember that the one throw basically falling down he threw to Tyreek Hill. So Tua was on the move today a lot with this offensive line and everything that he had to deal with there. This was not the cleaner games that we had seen in weeks prior. And you can give some credit to Houston there, but I do think that the offensive line was not playing up to what we had seen the past 3-4 weeks to what we had seen here, where it wasn't feeling great. And then when Teron Armstead came, the floodgates opened up and Tua was getting teed off on. So I definitely understand the logic behind it. And I don't disagree that Tua is a guy who is more prone to injury maybe than a bigger physical quarterback. But this is not a knock on him. This is a very big position of luxury. You up 30-0 on a team against a team that sucks and you figured it had no chance of coming back. Now, look, I think their head coach, I think a couple things. One, the Dolphins had no faith in their run game because, the play calling, even when Skylar Thompson was going there, these were 10-second drives. They were taking off no time in trying to, they were taking off no time in trying to put away the Houston Texans. They weren't able to run the football. So I was getting a little Joe Philbin queasy at certain points. I could feel Dolphins PTSD, disaster looming in the back of my head at certain points. But, all in all, you had some pretty ballsy plays at the end of it. Jerome Baker had a big time sack. The Vincent McKinley interception was huge. So cool story for him to get that. But, Lovie Smith punting, down 15 points with 5 minutes left in the game didn't make a whole lot of sense to him. Him going for 2 when he went for 2 didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So certainly the Dolphins were not up against a juggernaut here. That's for sure. I don't think this was like an A+ performance from the Dolphins, but it is not one that like opens up a house of concerns about are they real, are they legit. I still think they're legit. I think that they're going to have a lot of proving to do. They're going to get that opportunity coming up in these next 3 weeks. But, for me, honestly, we all know the biggest concern is injury. Like, what is going to be the status of Teron Armstead? What's going to be the status of Austin Jackson? What do we want the status of Austin Jackson to be? What do we want what is this offensive line going to look like? Those are the big questions going forward. But this is certainly going to be nut check time for these 3 games coming up. At San Francisco, which is going to be juicy as hell because you got Mike McDaniel returning to the franchise that he was with for a long time. Then, of course, you got Tua versus Herbert in the showdown coming up in L.A. And then I think the one we're all chomping the bit for that's probably going to get flexed into Sunday Night Football is Dolphins and Bills, which could end up deciding the division. So this is going to be, but you know what, Dolphins, like this is what you wanted. This is huge, meaningful football. You definitely feel like you have the confidence these last 6 games that you could beat any of these teams. I think if the Dolphins have a winning record by the end of these games, if they are 4-2 in these last 6, you're talking about one of the better records in the NFL. You're talking about 12 wins at that point, 12-5 guaranteed a record. I think 3-3 would be a bit of a disappointment, though you probably still get into the playoffs at that point. But you're probably going to be favored in 4 out of 6 of these games, I would guess. And I think that's probably the record you're aiming for. But look, man, crazier things have happened. And I think that you have the faith in this team that they can go out and they can beat any of these teams. I don't think that they're outmanned in any of these games. And I think that the beauty of this game, though it wasn't the prettiest there in the second half, is there could be a lot of teaching moments there for Mike McDaniel, in himself included. And they can better themselves and move on to the next game in what was a still a pretty easy win. So, good for them. And by the way, Jalen Waddle having a penguin earring, the coolness that oozes off of this guy is just amazing and incredible. But he had a couple drop skis today, but also maybe had one of his best catches of the season. So shout out to him. Got to see some penguins when I was away on vacation. It's good to be back with everybody. New Porpoise Pod's going to be out, so check that out. Me and my guy Solana doing some more breakdown of the game as well. And looking forward to this run, man. I'll be back this week with a radio show starting on Monday, so we'll see you guys there. I got nothing else.